Hello and good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is your captain speaking, and welcome to We Educate Racing. In this video, we're going to go over how to tune for toe angles in Gran Turismo 7. But before we do, I just want to make sure that you guys have seen the previous tuning videos. I'll have them linked in the description below. It's just so that you guys would be caught up to how we got these values here, but also everything we mentioned in this video would make sense. Alright, with all that being said, it's lights out and away we go. Toe angles. It's basically this. It's how the tires point, either inward or outward. Pretty self-explanatory. Unfortunately, everything you read here does not tell you how to tune it. This just explains what it is. Okay? So go ahead and go over that real quick and then we can move on. Now, the best way to explain this is starting with the rear. It's best explained with the rear, and then we can go over the front once we're done with that. Right. So, rear. The idea or the job of the toe angle is to stabilize the car in general, total. Okay. The higher you increase this, the more the car becomes stable in a straight line. That also means it doesn't want to turn. When they say straight line stability, it means it wants to stay straight, preventing the car from turning. All right. I can explain that really quick if it interests you, but okay, real quick. If you, let's say for instance, we have it set to 1. Let's just go extremes. Okay, that means the rear wheels are pointing closer towards the front of the car, right? Where they intersect, if you will. Okay, so because the angle of the wheel is pointing towards the front of the car, that also looks like it's turning inward, right? The turn in is canceled because there are two wheels pointing towards the middle of the car. Fine. But once weight is shifted to one side, then that wheel becomes active, for a lack of a better term. Therefore, because it's pointing inward towards the corner, and this wheel will also turn towards the same corner, the car is sidewinding rather than rotating, if that makes any sense. You have to kind of visualize that. It's sidewinding rather than rotating. So toe angles, you can't have it too much. Again, that's the whole point. It doesn't want to turn. Instead, it's sidewinding. It's trying to stay straight, right? So you don't want it. You technically want the rear end to swing, rotate. We set up the entire suspension system to do just that. And increasing this any higher will restrict our rotation that we've already built from here. So technically, all this is like a damper or a controller to not minimize but soften how much the rear end will rotate, and then it's gonna get to a point where it doesn't want to rotate anymore, which cancels out the entire build, which is not good, right? So for me, every time I tune, I always start at 0.1. It almost always starts at 0.1. The only time this will go up is because the wheelbase of the car that I'm tuning specifically is short. So for instance, like a Mini Cooper or the A500, you would need to increase this a little bit more just to stabilize it. The shorter wheelbases are very agile. It's very easy to make U-turns with them. It's just the agility. It's just how it works. Okay. Well, for a longer wheelbase, like say for instance the NSX, right? That is already naturally stable. So therefore you can lower this value and everything will be all right. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Shorter wheelbase means you need to increase this to maintain stability. Otherwise, if you go ahead and test it out yourself, you'll notice the car is still very agile. To prevent that, increase this value. Okay. For this tune, we'll start at 0.1, and this is most likely going to be permanent. We don't need to change this. We're relying on stability with all of this. It's already set up that way. The damper is going to absorb all the aggressive inputs that we we apply when we drive, so we don't need to worry about any more stability. It's all taken care of with the damper. Okay, so now that you understand how the toe angle kind of works, um, and how to tune it, and the idea is to stabilize the car in general, right? The front is doing something else. Okay, as mentioned before, whatever the front is doing, the rear is doing something else, right? Well, if you tune the front just like the rear, if you tune them the same like this, if you notice, the front is already turning into the corner, right? We're at Bathurst turn one, so we're turning left. Uh, in the beginning, or when it's going straight, all turning ability is canceled because there are two wheels doing the same thing. They're both facing in the direction that you're cornering into, or they're both facing the middle of the car, right? So when you corner, once weight is shifted, then because the wheel is already facing the corner, it's going to turn in much quicker, right? That's okay if that is what your intention is, but we are already using camber angle to establish how quick our car turns in, right? If you haven't seen the camber video and how that works, go ahead and check that out real quick and then just come back here. It's very interesting. Um, so therefore, we technically don't need toe for the front, okay? Because we're already relying on the front camber to initiate how quickly our front turns in. And if we want more, just increase this. All good. You don't need to touch toe for that. All right. So therefore, because the rear end is rotating, in some cases it's going to over rotate, like as in enter into a drift. And so naturally, it's almost instinctive for the driver to counter steer when the rear end swings out. Okay, so if it's pointed outward, you notice that the wheel is already counter steering, or at least facing in the direction of a counter steer. Therefore, the front end is eliminating any excess rear end oversteer, which is very good. Very good, as in this is what we want. Now, you can keep increasing this to stabilize the rotation, right? Because it's already counter steering for us naturally. So it's almost like you don't need to counter steer. The front end is already doing that for us. Okay. However, it's eliminating our turn-in capabilities, right? So if you were to increase your negative toe angle, as in it points outward, that means you need to turn the wheel more just to get the front end to turn just as much. This would also make it slower, so then you would need to increase your camber angle just to compensate for how much slower the wheel needs to turn, because it's pointing outward, and you need to not only bring it back to middle, but you also need to make it turn more just so that you can make the corner, right? If that makes sense. I'm going off of the top of my head. It's nothing scripted here. Okay, so if that is your intention as a driver, to stabilize the rear end from over rotating, then you're going to need to increase your toe angles. But doing so, you also need to increase your camber angle just so that you can keep the car turning. If you don't do that, then you're not turning enough. If you don't increase this value, then your steering input will not be enough to make the corner, or at least make it as agile as it would be if it was set to a lower value. If that makes any sense. I hope it does. If that confused you, go ahead and let me know in the comments, and I'll type it down so that you can read it. And yeah, all right. So there's like a give or take, right? And so to start, I set mine also at negative 0.1, pointing outward, because I also want the front to also naturally counter or catch the rear oversteer, excess rear oversteer, so I don't have to counter so much. But also, I'm relying on front and understeer with the front ride height. So we technically don't need toe angles as a means of understeer. It's just to keep the rear end from oversteering and that we don't need to countersteer so much. So in terms of tuning, it's just, yeah, point 1 and point 1. The front is pointing out, the rear is pointing in. That's it. You technically do not need to touch this anymore. Let's say going back to that Mini Cooper, right? And your value is like this. So it would be a good idea to also match how much you set your toe in and toe out. However, that will vary. The cornering capability will vary depending. It depends on the car, and it's the weight balance, its weight ratio. If you have it set like this, some short wheelbase cars will have a difficult time cornering because it's too stable, right? But also the way the weight shifts on those cars, it because they're so light, the inertia generated is not enough to make the car rotate. Therefore, you need to either reduce the values for the rear so that it swings out, but also you need the turn in. You need more turn in. You're set up for a front engine, front wheel drive, short wheelbase car would look something like this. Just so that the front still bites aggressively, but the rear is stable enough to catch it. Yet there's not enough grip to maintain to prevent the car from rotating. So it will still rotate, but it's stable and it's sharp. It bites like sensitive in the front in terms of turn in. Like as soon as you steer into the corner, it'll do so, and then this will prevent any excess rear end rotation. So yeah, that's that's why this is set up that way, specifically for front end rear wheel cars, front engine front wheel drive cars. But for front engine rear wheel drive cars, it would look more like this. Yeah, something like that, right? Because this is set up with the rear end to swing out, we need more contact patch here, and we don't necessarily need stability for the toe, so this is set to its minimum, not zero. All right, 0 is like very loose. There's no sense of stability in that sense. Like, how can I better explain that? Um, if you were to just say, for instance, you're driving straight and you needed to overtake a car and you do the zigzag quick left, quick right, because this is straight, your rear end is going to continue swinging left and right until it stabilizes, which is not good. You want that stability almost instantaneously. And you can set it to 1, and then when you try to do the same overtake maneuver, the quick left, quick right, if the rear end is still wobbling, then you can increase this value. But remember, doing so means you have to adjust something up here. I would recommend the anti-roll bar because we already set the ride height to a specific inertia generator level, certain inertia level generator. So you don't want to touch that. Instead, you would adjust anti-roll bar. If you were to increase this value, preventing the car from turning, then you have to increase this to compensate for that. So, but that's for more advanced tuning, and we'll talk more about that once we get the car on track. Okay, but yeah. So let's see. Oh, one more other thing. A lot of guys are not going to tell you this because either they don't know about it or no, it will be most likely because they don't know about it. You would know this if you're a physics genius. Okay. The reason why we want this also toe out is because when something spins, like if you have a, say for instance, like a CD, and you have it laid down flat, and you have a string in the middle of that, and it's spinning, nothing happens, right? It only when you turn the that disc 90 degrees, like how it would be on a wheel, then there is this weird force that is being generated that makes that disc spin around an axis. It's really weird. I can't explain how it's doing that. All I know is that it does. Like you spin an object like flat and then turn it 90 degrees. There's this weird force that's making the disc rotate around a specific axis. It's weird. I'm guessing the faster you spin it, the bigger the axis, but I'm not sure. But just know that because of that, it's actually forcing the wheels to turn back to the middle. It's really weird. Like the left wants to turn. You see how the right wheel is pointing outward? This force is turning that wheel inward, and vice versa for the left side. It's turning the wheel back to the middle. It's really weird. I can't explain it. If you want to look further into it, just look at centrifugal force physics. And maybe it'll explain it better there, but just know that that is what's happening. It's inevitable. It's happening no matter what. For the rear, it's making this worse, actually. It's pointing this inward much more. The faster you go, the more that force is trying to make the wheel point further inward. AKA, it's making the car much more stable the faster you go. So it's not a good idea to increase this too much, because not only about the tire wear, but also of that weird force. I don't even know what it's called. But yeah, it's just know that it's happening. It's really weird. It's science, it's physics, it's nature. I don't know. I don't know what else to call it. It is what it is. Okay. So yeah, same thing with this. It's wanting to point inward. So technically, the faster you go, the narrower this becomes, or at least it's trying to close in. It's not doing it because the toe angles are fixed, but there's just this weird force that's doing it, and it's I can't explain it. I'm sorry, please forgive me, but yeah. So but then once you start to slow down again to prepare for corners, then yeah, then that goes away, so you don't need to worry about it. But yeah, all right, that's pretty much it. The idea is to stabilize the car, and the rear end does all of that stability generating, and then the front is just to catch any excess rear end oversteer. Excess rear end oversteer, as in that's when you need to start counter steering, right? Because when you're turning as the rear end rotates, you technically don't need to turn so much. It's only when you start to counter steer, that's when you're starting to get excess oversteer. You still need to turn in, if not barely turn in, like as in all-wheel cornering, like all four wheels are sliding. And that's a technique, an advanced technique that a lot of drivers can't learn. You have to, the easiest way to do that is in rally, like on loose surfaces, dirt or snow, and obviously in an all-wheel drive car. But that technique, when you learn that and apply it onto the track with a rear-wheel drive car, like that's how aliens do it. I'm just saying, like that's how they figure out, like they're turning with the back wheels. It's really weird. Anyway, well, yeah, again, if you're interested in that, I'll go more in depth with how to drive a car with the rear wheels, how to turn the car with the rear wheels. If that interests you, just type in rear wheels in the comment section. But all right, the next video we're gonna talk about downforce. This is the last of the 3 constants that I mentioned in the natural frequency video. weight ratio is number 1. Um, front ride height is number 2, and aerodynamics is number 3. The 3 constants we need to complete our suspension setup, our tuning. All those 3 things is what we need to tune our suspension, right? So we'll get to that in that video. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do so you don't miss out when that video comes out. Hopefully you guys learned something. If so, give me a thumbs up if you liked the video or just the content in general. You guys know the algorithm. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching this far, all the way to the end. I sincerely appreciate it. I'm sure it helps the algorithm as well. You guys like the video. Cool. So, okay, that's all. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.